right, boys, we're live.
Yes, sir.
Welcome to Sketchy Chopper Society.
Back on the road.
We're back on the road. We're out in Waterloo, and we're joined by Lee. We'll get him to introduce himself in a minute. And yeah, so last episode we discussed People's Champ,
Yep.
Final Six, 2 Canadians.
Thank God.
So that was pretty cool. What else did we talk about?
Did our predictions.
Yeah.
Predictions, that's right.
I
That's
probably
right.
dropped the mic or something.
Guaranteed.
Guaranteed.
Yeah, well, for sure you dropped the mic. We did a little discussion on fucking COVID pricing.
Yeah.
That's right.
The crazy shit that people are trying to pass off. Yeah. Anything else? What else did we talk about?
I'm trying to think what we did talk about. I just remember talking about People's Champ. And yeah. I don't remember. What was that? A couple years ago?
Yeah, fuck, it was like last week.
It was like 4 days ago.
What did we do last week? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll get right into it then. We got an interview with Lee Sipes today. So we'll just get him to introduce himself. Lee,
Hey, what's going on?
what's much, man? You?
No, I'm good.
Thanks for having us in your garage.
Yeah,
It's
no
fucking
worries.
pretty cool here, man.
Too many cool
shop.
things.
There is
Yeah.
a lot of cool things.
I'm making a Christmas list.
Yeah,
before I
we
leave.
almost lost one of our guys. He almost got beat up for almost dropping the pan. But
I'm really happy that didn't happen to him.
yeah,
I'm equally
At least it was the one that could have fixed it.
so Lee, tell us a little about yourself. What do you do?
Well, I'm all kinds of stuff, I guess. I've been into bikes a long time. Definitely got into it through family. Had, I think at least 4 generations of bike riding in my family for sure. Right back to my great-grandpa. I got pictures of him over there on my bulletin board there. He was
Sweet.
kind of a crazy dude. Rode a Harley, and everybody was told to stay away from him, and he went by a bunch of wild nicknames. And
That's awesome.
he went out to fight in World War II, came back, and left my great grandma for another woman that he met, and then became a stock car driver.
Nice. Nice. We'll snap a picture of the picture. We'll
Yeah,
throw it up
yeah.
on the Instagram.
Yeah, it's cool. He's an interesting cat. Yeah, when he was before World War II, he was known as Wild Ike. He used to like to surf his Harley up and down the streets of Orangeville in Toronto, where he hang out, and then when he was a stock car racer, he went by Dangerous Dan.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of fun.
Yeah, there's
cool.
a podcast guy we listen to down in
Yeah.
the U.S. called
Yeah.
Dangerous Dan.
Yeah, well, my great grandfather's name was Clarence, so no one could ever really figure out where he got these nicknames from.
Dangerous
Even-
Clarence just didn't
Even
have the
his
right ring.
grandkids. I was talking to my aunt about this around Christmas, and she goes, growing up, I never knew what Grandpa's name was. Said every time he'd show up, we'd have to call him something different. So that was kind of just how.
Sounds
how
kind
it
of like a
went.
prison thing. I think.
Dodging some authorities, maybe.
That
was-
fucking pesky CRA.
Yeah.
He was a bit of a wild man when he came back from the war. He came back with a literal chest full of medals.
Nice.
And when I was a kid, I was really into war history and stuff, and I did a bunch of projects kind of on him. And I had 2 other uncles that fought, and they all 3 of them came back. But he was a sergeant, and he drove a bulldozer, clearing minefields in front of the front lines through Europe, and yeah,
Nice.
he was a bit of an animal. So yeah, he's got some big awards under the British and Canadian military stuff. So it's kind of cool.
That's
Nice.
cool.
Yeah,
Nice. Your mic keeps cutting in and out for some reason.
mine?
Yeah, I'm not sure why.
Maybe I'm too far away.
No, you're coming in and then out, but that's okay.
Okay, maybe that's better.
Yeah, we'll go there. So yeah, my grandfather same way, right?
Yeah.
Did the war. He was he did Juno. He was one of the guys that
Yeah.
ran Juno. Not the first wave, but I think he was like 2nd or 3rd, whatever. Came back with a shit ton of medals and a bit of a nut job.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's pretty common, I'd imagine, right?
Oh
for
yeah,
that era,
yeah. You
so-
see some pretty life-altering things.
Yeah,
They
absolutely.
never really come back from it, so
Yeah.
it happens. Yeah.
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 Yep. So outside of your family being all into motorcycles, what got you really into wanting to build your own, collect your own? Because you got quite the fucking collection here.
Yeah. Quite a cool
I would say, I mean, I've been riding ever since I could. Like ever since I think it was my 16th birthday, my dad took me to get my motorcycle license, and I had a 1981 Honda Goldwing that was my grandfather's bike
Gold wings are the shit.
that I rode. That I still own that bike. It's just in storage right now. I can't really jam it in here, but and it's on my grandfather's grave, so it's hard for me to get rid of that bike, even though I don't really ride it anymore. And it's pretty much stock, and it's actually in real good shape. But I don't really, it's kind of a time capsule. I don't really want to wear it out any more than it already is.
Yeah.
I just kind of want to leave it because it's not really worth enough to someone else that it's worth me, financially
Selling.
benefiting from it. So I
Yeah.
might as well just kind of hold on to it as long as I can and just kind of appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
What got me into building stuff? I bought my first Harley. I think it was 2010 or 2011 when I bought my first Harley. So I was only about 22, 23.
Nice.
And my dad had just bought a brand new Road Glide, 2011 Road Glide Special. Really nice bike. I was like, that's it. So I went down to our local wreckers, our bike wreckers in town here, Zdeno's, and I bought a totally wrecked 2000 Super Glide. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to build a bike. I can't afford to go out and buy one straight up. So I bought a wreck bike for like peanuts. It was like first year, second year twin cam. I didn't really know a lot about, like I knew a little bit about Harleys, but I definitely didn't know that much.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I knew I wanted a Harley. I just didn't know all the ins and outs. In retrospect, there was a shovel head sitting there that I should have bought.
Yeah.
I didn't know enough about it, and I saw it and it was cool, but I saw this other bike and it was more complete. So in my brain, that was like what I should be buying because I have more pieces to it.
Yeah.
So I bought that and I kind of started down the road of building that bike. So I got a frame off of a custom shop that I knew of, and started tearing it down, and I took it all apart and just kind of learning as I went, you know, taking it all apart, seeing what I needed, seeing how to figure it out. And I started grafting what I could off of that bike onto this custom frame that I had bought. It was a hardtail frame, and, you know, I kind of got into a rolling chassis situation and all this stuff. And I had bought that bike without telling my ex-girlfriend about it. Ex-girlfriend being she came up for Christmas and go, oh yeah, that's my Harley in my parents' garage. Sorry I didn't mention that. I know you really don't like motorcycles, but yeah, I got this now.
Well, there's your first sign.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. So yeah, that relationship ended a few short months later, and I met my wife later on that year. We've been together about almost 10 years now. And I had that stuff, and I was working on that bike, and I was kind of going back and forth. It was at my parents' house, so I was going back and forth, and it was kind of tough to work on it. And I had buddies come over, and you're learning too, and you get intimidated by it because I didn't really know anybody that was into this stuff. I was kind of on my own, and you have some internet stuff at the time, but it wasn't like it is now.
Yeah, no, it's close.
There wasn't like all of the, you know, it wasn't the accessibility to all this knowledge wasn't there.
Yeah.
You couldn't just reach out and ask a question. You really had to know.
Mm-hmm.
So I was dealing with this one custom shop that was kind of at the time, it was good for me, but we had a bit of a falling out. Now the shop's closed, but I've kind of, you know, developed a relationship with the owner again because there was kind of some stuff that went on there. But I ended up selling that bike. I sold the two separate things. So I kind of gathered the pieces together and I kind of got into something. But then my wife showed some kind of, we had just started dating, and I was working for Harley Davidson at the time in Richmond Hill. And
Davies?
Yeah, back when it was Davies, yeah. As a sales guy. I wasn't there for very long. I didn't really get along with my boss very well. He was kind of a piece of shit. But
And that's why they're out of business.
yeah, but actually it wasn't Bob Davies. It was a sales guy that I wouldn't say I had issues with, but he was a real backstabber.
Mm-hmm.
And his time was up there shortly after when they kind of went through my notes about what he was doing through some of the sales stuff. But he, at the time I was riding, and I bought this. So at the same custom shop I had bought this stuff, I had traded a bunch of that stuff to him and bought from him a Road King that he had just built. I think it was a 2004. And I got a picture. It's kind of in the window there. It was like this tangelo orange color. It had purple and like lime green flames. And it wasn't stretched or anything. It wasn't like these baggers now. Like it was kind of, you know, it kind of was before this whole bag, like really exaggerated bagger craze. I just wanted a bike that I could get on a ride and that had a back seat so my wife could get on. And I rode that bike every single day, every day. I put tons of miles on that bike. I rode that bike from Waterloo to Richmond Hill almost every single day while I was working at Harley. And and then me and my dad went to Laconia on that bike. So I put real serious miles on that bike. And the reason why I sold that bike was because it had a Rolling Thunder frame.
Mm.
And at the time, I was in my early to mid 20s. The insurance on it was crazy, and it was killing me. Yeah. And I wasn't making a lot of money. and I you know, the bank owned more of that bike than I did. So with that, you know, in conjunction with the crazy insurance, I was just getting tanked. I was really getting tanked. So I started looking around, and that's when I found my Softail over there. Not in that state, but close to it. And I found it off a guy who was a Harley tech at another dealership, and it had been gone through the dealership system. It was owned by one of the owners there, and he had made the wise decision to give up his life as a mechanic and become a restaurant owner, and was about to lose his house and needed to make a huge payment on his restaurant, so he was selling his very expensive Harley for about a third of what it was worth.
Nice.
Gotta love that.
Yeah, so I scooped in there, and he was out in the middle of nowhere. Like, he was literally in the middle of nowhere, so nobody's coming to see this bike. And I went up there. I'm like, yeah, and I imagine it was kind of emasculating having this like 24-year-old kid just beat the shit out of you on a price on a Harley. But I walked away with it, and it had a Harley title and the insurance cut in half. So that was, you know, that's how it became that way.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now, did you find? So obviously you drove something other than Harleys before you got your
Yeah,
first Harley.
Yeah.
Do you find working on Harley, like not really having an idea of how to work on it, that they were really easy to work on? Like they're kind of straightforward bikes. I find, like me working on them, I find they're very like American, very simplematic,
Well,
very.
I think with Harley, I mean, they haven't changed a lot in so long.
Yeah.
So once you kind of get to know the general idea,
Yeah.
it's interchangeable between models.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? If you work on, say, like if you work on a sport bike, it doesn't transfer to another model,
No.
right?
Yeah.
It's totally different. You
Yeah.
got to learn a whole nother language.
Exactly.
But Harley stuff, especially the older stuff, I mean, it's like 6 parts and then a bunch of accessories.
Yeah.
Really, right?
Exactly what I found.
So that's kind of that kind of simplicity is really cool, because you can then throw a lot of creativity on a very simple platform, and you can really work with that.
Very easy to make it your own, right?
Exactly.
With very
easy.
little work, you
Yeah.
can make it completely original.
And you don't have to change, like, you don't really have to change any of the like core foundational functioning parts.
Yeah.
And you can have a totally different looking bike than the next guy, and all you had to do is change a couple of like fairly inexpensive things.
Yeah.
So that's what I like about Harley.
Yeah.
Right? That's cool.
Yeah, that's what I found too.
Yeah.
Yeah, doesn't get you the pussy like everyone says, though.
Oh, those old guy pussy.
I mean,
Yeah,
I'm
man.
sure my wife's glad I'm not getting it.
If you fold the belly over just right, you can squeeze.
Get that belly button.
So tell us a little bit about your pan here.
Yeah. So the Panhead I bought about 8 years ago, 7 years ago maybe. I got it out of Mississauga. It was an Auto Trader ad.
Really?
Oh, I love Auto Trader.
It was
know.
it was a picture of a half a bike, just the front end half. You could see that it was a Panhead. It was funny. I knew about vintage bikes, but I always shied away because I never really had guys around me that knew anything about vintage bikes. And if you're not into vintage bikes, the idea of old Harleys is that they're pieces of leaky shit.
Yeah.
And that's the general consensus from anyone that doesn't own them.
Yep.
Pretty much. And that's what I kind of grew up with. So I was at a buddy shop who was into really cool stuff that I was kind of, and I was really fresh to kind of the like garage built stuff. I mean, I had like tons of horse magazines. I was really into that sort of thing, but I never really like dipped my toes into that garage build kind of feel.
Mm-hmm.
And I started hanging out with a couple of guys, and they were quite a bit older than me, but I was just like, man, this stuff is like awesome. And they turned me on to these, like, you turned me on to the vintage swap meets and all this stuff that I kind of heard of, but I kind of just always passed off. And I started going to these things, started going to the States and going to these swap meets. And I'm like, man, this stuff is like so cool. There's so much more history to it. I'm huge into history. And once you start diving into that stuff and you see all of the cool stuff that's attached to it, that really drew me in.
Yep.
But that Panhead, yeah, it was an Auto Trader ad, had half a picture, and it was like, it was all black, really 80s looking, had like a trailer fender as a front fender and a rear fender. It was listed for like $10,500, I think, about 7 or 8 years ago.
It's a bargain.
Yeah.
Well,
That's about the same as what. No, a little bit less than
Yeah.
what we'd be going.
so it was listed for $10,500, and it was it's a 64, so it's the outside oiler heads and all the nice stuff they did kind of in the later years of the Panheads. And I mean, that stuff has gone crazy now. Even the outside oiler heads, man, they're like pulling huge bucks now. And it was dumb luck. I didn't have the knowledge to know anything other than it was cool and it was a Panhead and that I could do something cool with it. That was really all I went into it with.
Nice.
And I went there on a Wednesday night, and I was going to college at the time. I'd gone back to school, and I was broke, super broke. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go look at this bike. I was just at a buddy's place. He had a panhead motor. It was an STD motor, but he had it on the shelf. And I was looking at it. I'm like, man, that's such an awesome looking motor. Like you get attached to the pieces. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
art.
You get attached to the pieces of it. So I went there on a Wednesday, and I was, and I got there, and it was an older lady and her daughter. And they were very, very nice people. And they're moving back to England. The husband who owned the bike, he had 2 bikes. He had a shovel head and he had the panhead. He had passed away. I guess they had moved from out west years before, and like the second day after they moved, he had an aneurysm on the couch and died.
Jeez.
So they had all this stuff in the garage, and it just kind of sat there. Like literally the panhead was under like a dead Christmas tree in a huge aquarium, and like it was just buried in shit. And we had to dig it out of there. And I mean, I went into that thing. It was listed for $10,500. I had no money to my name. Like, this was a joke. Like, I don't have $10,000 to spend on a motorcycle that doesn't run. So I went in there and I was like, I don't know. And I was looking at this thing, and you could tell they kind of just wanted it gone. And I was the first guy to show up.
Nice.
And we kind of struck up a conversation, and we got along. They were really, really nice people. And they could tell that I was pretty respectful of this stuff, and I was kind of reverent to it. You know what I mean? I wasn't just like, oh yeah, whatever. And I wasn't beating them up over it.
Yeah.
I was just being straight up with them. I said, listen, I really like the bike. I think I could do something really cool with this bike. The daughter told me that his plan was to always build a show bike out of it. It's got some heavy duty history from like the West Coast.
Okay.
Because that's where he was from, and he kind of came over here. They kind of made it seem like he had to go.
Nobody leaves the West Coast.
That bike is originally from Surrey, BC, and if you know anything kind of about that kind of history, so he came over here and died shortly after. But I think that was kind of I think they kind of had to go.
Yeah.
So I was like, listen, I'm gonna be straightforward with you.
My stomach's about to drop because he's about to tell us he got it for free. Or something.
I got it for I got $3,000.
Oh my god.
What the fuck?
And she said, well, should we had
I'll give you 2.
She said, well, we've had an offer of $35. I got $3,900. She goes, that sounds good.
Jeez.
So I rated my student loan at the time. I decided not to eat.
As we all
maxed
do.
out my $1,000 credit card, and I went and I bought it. And that same guy that I had seen the motor at his shop, I asked him, he has an old cool van. I was like, man, could you drive me down your van to pick it up? I don't got anything to pick it up in. He's like, yeah, man, that's cool. And he's like, so you really bought a panhead for like $3,900? I'm like, yeah, I think so. Like, it seems pretty cool and stuff. He was like, yeah. You have any pictures? I go, not really. He goes, oh, okay. He's kind of
Yeah. Basket
It's a
case
total
garbage.
basket, like literally in a basket.
And when we got there, I roll it out of the garage. He goes, it's together?
Told you everything but a white
He
man
goes-
then.
He goes, it rolls? And he's like this, like, you're a legend, man. You're a legend.
I'm in fucking shock right now. I mean, I'm looking at this bike and it was fucking under $4,000. Like,
And I mean, I've been looking for a pan probably good 15 years, right? Like,
Yeah.
And the cheapest I could find really is US is 10 grand.
So I found that bike on Auto Trader. I started looking for panheads, found that bike, and bought it in the course of about 36 hours.
Wow.
Oh,
I'd never looked for panheads before in my life. It was the first one I found.
I'm dumping it now. I'm dumping it now.
I think my problem was when I go searching for
shiny
like I was on the Jockey Journal and Chopper
yeah.
Cult and
Where
Well,
guys,
Chopper Underground,
well,
where
those
guys
guys
know
they
what they
Yeah,
have.
they know what they have, exactly.
I never
literally
thought
got
to
a
look at
barn
Auto
find.
Trader.
Yeah, exactly. You
Yeah.
go to what the old guys still
That's
posting.
exactly.
Auto
Well,
Trader,
that's what I was-
newspaper.
that was my mentality, because like I was going and I was like, okay, well, where can I find this stuff that not everybody's looking?
Yeah.
You go on Auto Trader. I mean, nobody lists old bikes on Auto Trader, and if you do, they're like $1 million,
Yeah.
or they're a scam, or they're like a dealership that's trying to flog something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And I was like, well, I don't know, maybe there's like somebody on there. And I was kind of like in my mind, I was like, maybe I'll get like a random
a widower
thing.
that doesn't know what she has.
And it literally lined up like that. Like, it's hilarious because like you couldn't plan it. Right,
Yeah.
you couldn't
Yeah.
plan that.
No.
You couldn't plan a widower moving out of the country, needs to clear out the thing, has a panhead with a title that I transferred into my name in 2 seconds, and like,
Jeez.
and it rolls together. For
and it
the
rolls
$4,000.
together, has everything, had a bunch of extra parts. I sold a bunch of stuff, had a bunch of original stuff with it.
Wow.
Yeah, like
That's fucking awesome.
yeah, they had a lot of the takeoff stuff from the original before it was kind of bobbed out. Yeah, it was cool, and then it took me about 4 years to put together kind of how you see it now.
Nice.
Looks good though.
Yeah,
it's
a lot of it's just swap meet stuff. Like it's not like there's a couple of new parts on it, but not really. Most of it's just swap meet stuff. The design changed a little bit over time, and depending on either deals or just people I came in contact with, and I traded a lot of stuff. The front end, it's like just like a mid USA front end, but what's cool about that front end is it was on a Triumph chopper that this old Satan's Choice guy that is really close with a good buddy of mine. It was on his bike for a while that he had built for him. And that bike was also, it's funny because that guy owned that bike. That bike also was the first bike that my best friend Adam had built, which was a Triumph chopper. It was a different front end, but it was the same bike.
Huh.
Wow.
So that bike passed through all these different people, and then I ended up with a front end that was on that bike.
Nice.
So that was kind of a funny thing because it's such a small world in the bike stuff, right? It's so incestuous. You come across a lot of the same stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then I made his stuff for it. Parker made my bars, and I got the headlights. 64 Grand Prix. I got those for $5 at a swap meet in Owen Sound. And people sell those for like a lot of money. I found out, but I got 2 of them. I got them for $5, and the guy was like $5. I'm like, I don't know. He's like, I'm like, yeah, I guess the $5.
Jesus.
Yeah.
We're hanging out.
Like,
We're going to swap meets.
Fuck Peterborough swap meet. We're coming out this way.
Yeah. Like,
Obviously, you know how to suck.
Like it was kind of, it was like a lot of dumb luck. Like some of it, like I knew a little bit.
Yeah.
I knew enough to be dangerous, but not enough to really know what I was doing.
Yeah.
So I kind of just limped through it, and a lot of it was just stupid luck.
Oh, yeah.
Which made it feel a lot better, and that's I would really have a hard time getting rid of that bike ever because of all those kind of things that lined up.
Well, I mean, the
I'll give you
the story that comes
$3,900
along with it, right? Yeah. I mean, the story comes along with it.
Yeah.
The people you've met with the bike, it's hard to
It's
give that
huge,
up, right?
man. Yeah. That bike is. I've met so many people with that bike.
And it's irreplaceable. Good luck trying to find another replacement, right?
Exactly.
It's not going to cost you $50,000.
And that bike has gone on now to be like a cover bike for Revolution magazine. It's been in like 6 other magazines. Yeah. It's got me in a ton of shows in Canada and the States. Like that's super rad stuff. Yeah. And I've had so many good times because of that bike that alone is worth keeping.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't owe me anything. And I could never, I'd be like, if my legs got chopped off and I couldn't see anymore.
Make it into a trike.
It's a fucking
Yeah.
Good point. So that's it, right? Like that bike does. And every time, sometimes I kind of forget about that, and then I'll come in and look at it and go, yeah, okay, I remember. It's like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you don't see your friend for a while, and then you come back, you're like, oh, yeah, I remember.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, yeah, speaking of shows, you just mentioned shows.
Yeah.
What kind of shows have you been down to in the States? And
Well, I did Night of the Troglodytes there right before kind of everything shut down in New Jersey, in Wildwood, New Jersey. It's attached to Trog.
Nice.
Which is, I've been going to that for a bunch of years. My buddy Adam was a racer in that, and I've gone down as pit crew for him. And I rode his 45 in California when they did the Trog in California, and I got sideswiped by a one-legged dude on an Indian, so I knocked me out of the race.
A one-legged dude on an Indian. You can't buy that shit.
No,
God, man, we got to write a book of it in life right now.
Yeah, it was a whole, I burnt grill marks into my hand because the motor was so hot. Ripped my pants right off. I almost took a kicker pedal right in the sack. It was a whole thing. It happened in front of like news cameras, and it's like it was ridiculous.
Perfect.
It was ridiculous. It was such a ridiculous thing. Yeah, some old guy like restored this really beautiful Indian Scout. I think it was a Scout. It was like kind of like a periwinkle blue kind of thing, and he had one leg. He had a peg leg and a suicide shift. And he popped the clutch and just T-boned me and just took me out in the middle of the lineup trying to go down to the...
I mean, we're
You
laughing.
got taken out by a fucking
we're
pirate.
laughing, and it's got to suck when it happens.
Oh, yeah.
so
man.
it blocks me. And I'm like, what?
What the hell
What's
just
going on
happened?
right now?
Yeah.
Like, why'd you hit me?
You can't even beat the
And
guy,
I'm going
right?
down.
No, yeah, right?
Yeah, and it's hilarious because I've got like California was really cool because I have like Steve Caballero's like right in front of me, and I have like all these like big bike builder guys. We're like all around, and it's awesome. And they're all like, "Man, are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I just got run over by a one-legged dude on an Indian." And the best part was when we got down to the beach, he came over and was expecting an apology from me.
From you?
Yeah,
Because you were in his
he's
way.
this grumpy old prick. And his son's like, "I'm really sorry. Like, my dad's kind of, he's kind of grumpy, and he just built this bike. It's been a big dream to race it, but you know, I just wanted to say I'm sorry. Like he's not going to apologize. I'm like, okay, thanks.
Well, at least the son was a good dude.
Well,
right?
you know what? The old guy blew the bike up without making it halfway down the track, so I was vindicated.
There's
Kaboom, and then it just blew up, and I was out of that bike. So
Karma, dude, karma.
yeah, the restoration was of poor quality.
Hence the one leg.
The other one got lost in the fucking drivetrain.
Yeah.
So how do you find the differences between Canadian shows and U.S. shows?
Well, it's different here because the U.S. shows are a lot more. What would you call them? I would say U.S. shows have this more regional feel to them.
Okay.
Maybe a little less now with social media and the internet. You get people traveling and people like a lot of people go to everything.
Mm-hmm.
So you have kind of this roving group, which is cool because you see a lot of the same people, and if you get in with some of the people, you see them at a lot of the shows. Trog's like that, right? A lot of people that participate in Trog do a lot of other shows. A lot of them aren't just, you know, pre-war or Knucklehead and 4 or 5 guys. They're into choppers. They're into other stuff. So you see them at hill climbs. You see them at bike shows, and that is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Here, we don't get a lot of the Americans coming up.
No.
So we see a lot of the same Canadian guys. But the other thing I would say is we don't have, like down there, I've been turned away from shows because they had too many panheads.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, like
Seriously,
imagine that.
seriously, like Fuel Cleveland, they was like, yeah, we were going to bring it down, but we have too many panheads, so we're not going to bring it down.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, whatever.
Fair enough.
Yeah, it was going to be on my dime. It's not like you're doing me a favor by telling me to stay home. But like some of the other shows, like Troglodytes was awesome. They're super cool. They do they have a cutoff though. They do like pre-70 or something.
Yeah, I think it's pre-60s or something. Yeah, like
It's knuckle
because there's no
and-
pans, right? It's
No,
knuckle.
there's
Is
pants. There's pants at
there
Troglodytes.
pants?
At Night of the Troglodytes, there's even shovels.
Really?
But it's
And
pre-
they're
it's-
allowed to run the beach?
No, they're not on the beach.
Okay.
This
Oh,
is
so
just
they're
the
just
chopper
oh,
show.
okay.
The show,
This is
yeah,
the straight up chopper show, and it's awesome. It's an awesome time. They do it in the parking lot of this one hotel there. I can't remember the name of it now.
And they do hot rods and shit there too, right?
They do hot rods too.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you can run hot rods.
Yeah, you
down
can
the
run. You
beach
can
too,
as
right?
long as it's like pre a certain year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they've got a whole
Warrior,
yeah.
like
whole
40s
list of
It's
like
really something. Like it
qualifications.
is really
Yeah.
something. A lot of people make fun of it. They say it's like cosplay or whatever because
No way,
guys
man,
get
it's-
dressed up in the stuff. But and
It's history, man.
it's fucking
It's-
cool.
and
We
you know-
don't exist without that.
Well, and I think too, a lot of the people that kind of call it cosplay don't realize it's not rich guys playing with old bikes. There obviously is guys with money down there because the stuff's expensive,
Oh, for sure.
but a lot of them are like pretty hardcore dudes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like, you know, meth is on the table for a few of those guys.
Yeah, they just happen to fall into an old knuckle somewhere.
Yeah, like it's not
Someone
like
in the family
it's
had a
not, it's
knuckle.
not like these are like clean cut like guys. Like these guys are like circus freaks. Some of them,
Yeah.
and it's great. Like it's awesome. Like I'm not saying that as a diss. Like it's,
No, absolutely.
It's,
No,
it's like Mel is. I call Mel. He's like the the ringleader, and he's like got all his circus freaks. That's what they do.
Yeah.
And they dress up for the show, but I mean it's pretty hardcore. I
You
mean,
got to have that kind of character, though, right?
and they
But
party. They
that's-
party hard too.
Yeah.
Like they're not going back to fancy hotels. I mean, like it's hard. It's a hard party when you go down.
And let's be honest, every subgenre has their cosplay, right? Like you do
For
the
sure.
chopper culture. I mean, lately it's Dixon flannels and fucking
Hey.
shit,
Yeah, sure.
right?
Watch
And,
it there,
you
brother.
You got the bagger guys that are in chaps and Harley t-shirts and shit as I'm wearing a Harley sweater. But so, I mean, I get it. When the old vintage guys are on their old vintage bikes, you want to look like that
Well,
era,
yeah, it's like
right?
you're going with the era, right? You're like, oh, I got a jacket, it's 30s, you know, my bike's 30s. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That's what they wore when they raced back then, so why not wear it when you're taking it out?
You know, anytime we go somewhere, I'm gonna air quotes here on circus freaks. Those are the most interesting dudes.
Yeah,
They've
absolutely.
got the best stories. They're the guys to hang out with after the shows. Like
100%.
in the motorcycle world, those are like that just comes hand in hand with it, just like a clapped out shovel or something, right?
Yeah.
You're gonna have a clapped out guy riding a clapped out shovel,
Well,
and meth is always on the table.
not always.
Sometimes,
sometimes.
Sometimes it's coke.
But yeah, like, well, we went down. We did the Night of the Troglodytes show, and it was an awesome time. I was hanging out with, you guys know Otter LaRouche.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's a buddy of mine. So we were hanging out. He actually got asked to leave town. I haven't got the full story about why that happened, but he was actually he was told to leave Wildwood at one point. So I had to
Really?
catch
I'm
up
gonna have
with
to
him,
ask him about that.
But so I had bought myself down there. You can get these I mean, I love margaritas. I love margaritas. And you can buy the big jugs of margarita. So I bought one of those, and I was wearing my vest, and I had it jammed in the pocket, and I drank this whole like gallon of margarita.
It's like a fucking Camelback.
And then I was like, well, what else? You know, I'm out of margarita, and so I bought this bottle of sangria, which was around $3.99. And it was for a full bottle of basically red wine. So it was a $3 bottle of red wine. And I started drinking that, and I was having a real good time.
Sangria's a duty.
Real good time.
From what you could remember, it was a good time.
It was a great time. And I was kind of sitting on my bike. I had my feet up on the handlebars, and I was kind of just laying back on the bike. And Otter decided to take off his shirt and straddle me.
Keep going.
So there's a lot of pictures of me kind of lying there with the bottle of wine and him straddling me with his shirt up over his head. And yeah, I don't know. And I broke my kickstand in half.
Awesome.
So the bike went down in the middle of this show to an audible gasp from about 600 people.
I've heard that. I've heard that somewhere.
Yeah. It was pretty funny, and it was all videotaped, and the band, I think, even stopped playing for a moment. So then I had to push my bike over and lean it up against the chain link fence for the rest of the show. My bike was the bike leaning against the chain link fence.
That's awesome.
At some point, I was like, all right, I'm going back to my hotel room. I was like, I'm done. The party went on until about 2 or 3 in the morning, and I was maybe about 1 or 2. I was like, okay, I've had enough. So I walked back. I'm like, oh, shoot. Shouldn't have left my bike out there.
Throw a chain around fence.
I'm like, okay. So I text my buddy Adam, who's staying in the hotel where the show is going on. Adam, go downstairs and just push my bike. His truck was there. His knucklehead was there, everything. Push my bike over by your truck. He texts me back. I can't find it. I'm going to bed. I go, what? What are you talking about? You can't find it. It's the only bike that's by the pool. Go get the bike. And he just went to bed. He didn't give a crap. He was like, son of a bitch. So I walked back the 3 or 4 blocks to the hotel from where I was staying. And it was all packing up. The band was packing up, and most of the bikes were kind of pushed into the hotel rooms or pushed out to the side. And I don't think I was wearing a shirt. I'm not sure I had shoes on. Definitely wasn't wearing a helmet. Keep in mind, there was a lot of cops there also. So I kicked my bike over, rode it back the 4 blocks to my hotel, and I think I wheelied it at one point because I wasn't really in the right state of mind to be riding a suicide shift. And I drove it right onto the front landing of my hotel room, leaned against the wall, went back inside. My wife was very surprised the next morning. Hey, how'd your bike get back?
I don't know. I pushed it.
I can't remember.
Adam
Did you ride it? I go, maybe. Yeah, that was a close one. It's not one I'm real proud of, but it made for a good story.
Yeah, definitely.
So, what are some of your favorite shows up here in Canada? I mean, we all go to Freedom.
Yeah.
We know you have a little bit to do with Freedom.
Yeah, Freedom's a great show. Roll the Bones is usually a pretty good time. I've worked off and on for Revolution Magazine, so I usually try to make it to that show.
Yeah.
My bike was featured there in the first year of the Roll the Bones show, so that was a lot of fun. What else is in Canada? There's a couple of small shows that were popping up, but it was kind of pre-COVID, and I remember there was a few that I meant to get to and I never did, and then I was kind of like, I'll get to them next year.
Yeah.
And then everything just kind of
Yeah.
crapped out.
Yeah.
So,
like the Hickory Switch.
yeah, I would say that I'm like pretty excited to kind of start venturing out again once things start opening back up. Yeah, I mean, Freedom is it's grown a ton.
Mm-hmm.
It's huge. Compared to, I mean, the first year I was there 3 or 4 years ago, I guess. And then the following year, almost doubled its size.
It basically, like, from the very first year was like a few hundred, like maybe 300 people, I want to say. I could be wrong on that number, but that's what I remember right now. But it was just cool. It was just like a cool vibe. You know, people were kind of in town.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't really like, and it was pretty much all older stuff. There wasn't a lot of like ride-in people that were just coming to see the show. It was mostly just people in the show.
Yeah.
And then by the second year, it had expanded quite a bit, and we're starting to get more people coming in. And it was really like our social media stuff wasn't really that prevalent. It was a lot of word of mouth that got out with that show. And it's not just a show. The location is really neat, and the fact that you can stay there and that it's this party too, which the party has really evolved. And the party's gotten a lot bigger than it was initially. Because like the first year, I mean, there was only like a handful of people that stayed.
Yeah.
But now the party is as big of a part of the event as the actual show. Yeah. My involvement with that, so I kind of met those guys. I met Jay and Neil initially before Freedom Machine had started, because I was just involved in some like kind of forum-y stuff on Facebook and about choppers, and I was kind of into that stuff. And I had my panel ready. I hadn't really done a lot of work on it, but I was kind of like in the process, right? And they reached out to me to do some advertising for them, basically, just so I could kind of, because they were like starting off low. And I met them at the Paris swap meet, and we talked and handed out flyers and kind of whatever. And then that first year, I brought out a bunch of people that I knew that were into old stuff, and really pushed it for them. And from there, it kind of expanded. It's kind of been up and down. Like some years, I'm a little more involved than others. It seems. I've done vendor stuff for them. I've done vendor sales. I've done that kind of stuff for them. A lot of day of organization stuff or logistical stuff, and I usually end up handling like a lot of the parking stuff and things like that. This year, I took over the booth for the Super Show that we were going to do in January. Now it's been pushed to March though, so it looks like it's still going to happen again.
Oh, really?
Great.
Yeah, I seen that the other day. Actually,
25th, 26th, and 27th. I think it just popped a couple days ago that they're going to push it to that.
Fuck, we should see if we can't get a little booth there for us.
So that's gonna be cool. So I want to bring out a bunch of bikes and just have a cool hangout with a bar and some couches and stuff, and just have a bunch of bikes and kind of have that grassroots feel. I don't want
for sure.
We were kind of pushing corporate stuff because we were looking for sponsors and stuff. But at this stage of the game, our sponsors are kind of set up. They come to us. We don't have to.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't have to push it the same.
Yeah,
it's a little bit more established. So I want to bring it back to that.
Yeah, that grassroots feels kind of like what the chopper guys go to. Yeah, it's very
right? Because once you kind of get away from that, you lose kind of the foundation of what it all started as.
Yeah.
And then it just morphs into every other show.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you got baggers and chaps and wolf shirts.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
And I mean, I like the sense that what Freedom does is they keep the in-town builders to the core, old choppers, old bikes, old cafe racers, and they kind of push the bagger guys and anybody that's on a daily rider kind of to the outskirts.
Yeah, I try to, and it's not to keep them out of the show. It's more like just logistics. It's just easier because it's cool to pack all the choppers and skinny bikes in downtown, and people work really hard on that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you want to promote that. You want to promote people's work. There's nothing wrong with going out and buying a bike and riding, because like riding is working on bikes is great, but riding is such a huge component because you work on your bikes to ride them.
Yeah. That's one thing I've always said. It's like almost nice to have two bikes. You have your project bike or your show bike, and then your everyday ride.
I think.
Or you have like five that don't run like that.
Five that don't run at all.
You gotta have. I think you got it. Well, I learned a hard lesson, right? I tried to make my project bike. So I rode maybe twice that year.
Yeah.
And I was just angry and pissed
that
all the
it
time.
ruins it. It ruins it because you're like, you want to. Yeah, I think you're right. If you want to build something, it's a lot more fulfilling if you have something else that you can just get on and go without having to think about it.
Exactly.
And then you can focus your energy on that because you make a lot of decisions based on doing things faster or, doing things cheaper because you want to get back to riding.
Exactly.
And then sometimes you lose kind of your initial vision for whatever you're trying to do.
Well, let's say I had a CB750 I built a couple years ago, which is full frame, everything I did on it, right? But I didn't really have, I had a daily, but it wasn't really what I wanted. So I want to get this, and I was going to ride that daily. Yeah. And I just kind of pushed it through, and then when I was done, I looked at it, I'm like, it's not even the bike I want. You know what I mean? So I ended up selling it.
Yeah. And that's no fun either.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
It's good when you get that spot, too, when you're fabricating or something. You're just like frustrated. You're like, okay, I need to just
My problem is if I leave projects too long, my ideas change. And I'm going through that with my
understatement of the year. I've had two of his
my ideas change weekly.
Yeah. I'm the same way because you see other things or you get other influences that you're like, wow, that is way better than my idea.
Yeah, exactly.
And you just kind of progress.
But at some point you have to stop and go, okay,
you have
stay
to make
focused.
Decisions. Yeah.
And that's kind of the stage I'm at now is we narrowed down the design, loosely designed, but the little inlets and stuff will get.
Let's bang this out and then
keep
those ideas in the back burner for the next one, right?
Yeah. Any major changes for sure, but But yeah, anyways, getting back to Freedom, I wasn't trying to knock them that they were pushing people to the outside because, again,
I know
all
what you're
those
saying.
people bring money for the vendors. All those people bring attention to the show. And that's kind of what you want. You want attention to the show, but it's a custom show and it's a chopper show.
Exactly. It's like a grassroots
and that's what
chopper
it's
show.
supposed to be.
Yes.
You can go to any other bike show or bike night and see the baggers and all that kind of stuff. And when I'm at Freedom, I walk around, when I'm not working my booth because we're sponsors there as well. I'll walk around and check out all the bikes, even the baggers
I
and
see
stuff.
that a lot.
Right?
Even the year that I've gone is you go and you see all the bikes in the main alley and stuff. You're like, oh, these are awesome. Like looking at them, then you look and you'll see people just walking through the parked bikes that ride in. You know what I mean?
Because there's a lot of nice bikes, a lot of
builders
builders that didn't put their bike in the downtown that are scattered all over the place.
Very much so.
And the camping's awesome there.
Yeah, the camping's cool. The party's cool. Like it's got a whole different vibe. And as time, you never do everything 100% right, but I think that they want to do things as best as they can.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's definitely that's why I've involved myself with it, or why I've maintained involvement with it, is because even though we haven't always seen eye to eye on 100% of the stuff 100% of the time, I still believe in it as a whole, and I still believe in where it's going. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not a partner in the show, but I'm kind of like the
associate,
the main hype man, I guess you could say. That's kind of the position I feel it seems like at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I love the show, and I like the fact that when I reached out to them and said, I'd love to be a sponsor, it was no problem. We already have another studio, so we can't put you as a main sponsor, but we can put you there anyways, right?
Yeah.
So, and which is good. It's what I want. I like to get out there and meet people. And
well, I think that it's a huge network because it brings all these people together that you might not otherwise have met.
Yeah.
And a lot of the show, especially in Canada, you start meeting people that are very close to you geographically often, and you never heard of them or knew of them.
Yeah.
And that's what's so awesome about these shows, and that's why I like seeing more shows pop up. There's always kind of this idea that shows are kind of pitted against each other. There's people trying to do stuff, and some people kind of go in it with that attitude. If you experience that a little bit here and there, but I'm kind of, I would say post-COVID, my mentality's changed towards that a little bit, and just like, you know what, I'm just here for a good time. I just want to go and have a good time and stuff, exactly. and just like I had this conversation with a guy that I know the other day, and he was like, well, we're talking about the Super Show, and he was telling me, well, he doesn't really like the Super Show because it's all these, it's not his type of people. He likes the old school guys. He likes hanging out, talking about bikes, talking about the old days. Yeah. I go, that's fine. I go, but you have to, and I said, you have to understand, if you don't like something, then bring the elements that you like to that show and change it. Yeah. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. Yeah. So if there's nothing that's there for you, be the thing that's there for you. Yeah. Right. And the Super Show is big. Like we hang out in the custom hall. Yeah. There's all these, these like really over the top choppers and baggers and all this stuff that isn't my personal preference, but it does draw some people.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the stuff that we bring out draws our kind of people.
Yeah, exactly.
And isn't that the point? Like if you
kind of find something,
you can't complain
for everybody.
You don't have a place if you've never tried to make one.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. That was kind of my mentality. That's kind of my mentality towards a lot of this stuff. Right.
Yeah.
It's really easy to cut everything out and say, oh, nothing's good. I'm gonna tell you right now, I have a good time at a Goldwing rodeo.
Right? Yeah.
I'm gonna go and have a good time. I don't care.
You're gonna have as good as time as you want to have.
They may look at me like I'm a psycho, but I'm gonna have a good time at this thing.
Yeah.
I mean, you could put me at a scooter party and I'll still have fun.
That's
right?
what I mean.
As long as the people are good and the vibe's good, that's all that matters.
I think that's the lesson to be learned from it all. Is that you can't wait until everything's perfectly curated to your exact hobby, your exact thing, or else it's just an echo chamber and you're never going to have anything really that's that exciting. Yeah. Melting pot stuff is way more exciting. Yeah. You get all these different kinds of people, because the thing is, when you have if you have a show that's, just one kind of bike, for instance, even if it's just straight vintage, we don't want any other kinds of bikes there. Yeah. You're limited to the people that are going to build those bikes, to the people that are already building those bikes.
Exactly.
But you might get some dude that shows up on his brand new Goldwing or whatever. Or he's just saying Goldwing, a Road Glider or a Bagger or Honda Rebel or whatever. And he's going, holy crap. He goes, I've never seen anything like this. I really want to do this.
Yeah.
And that happens so much. And I don't think that gets enough credit, the kind of conversion.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's why it's so important, I think, to include in this idea of inclusivity. It's kind of a buzzword now, and it kind of it's inclusive. It's not really, a lot of things aren't really that inclusive, because they're not really doing it for everybody. They're doing it for a very select few things. And Freedom Machine is specifically a vintage antique custom show. That's what the show is. Yeah. But that's what the show is. That's not what the event
is.
But
the door's open for everybody.
Exactly.
That's not what that's what the show is specifically downtown. That's the show.
Yeah.
But the event as a whole, the 2 days or whatever you go, or the day you go, this party and, you know, all of the vendors, that's a whole other element. Yep. You can go and you can hang out in the forest there and like do peyote and disappear in the forest for a week. And then Rick comes out and like, you know, and tries to shoot you with his 357. Like, it's a whole thing.
Yeah, and there's lots of artists there, so there's a lot of art stuff to see.
Exactly.
Even if you're not even into bikes in general, it's still a pretty good show to come out and see.
Oh, yeah.
And just the environment alone, like the old ghost town is fucking something to see. If you've never been there, it's really something to see.
It adds a special vibe to that show, I find. Lee's the mic issue today.
Yeah. Yes. Might have to slide it down a little bit, maybe.
See, I get a treat when I go home and didn't touch the mic. You guys buy me a cookie.
Your treat is you get to go home.
We haven't gotten there yet.
Well, we're not.
You gotta walk out of here without breaking anything.
Yeah.
You know what? I think it's an excellent point that you hit on. That is, you know, the chopper guys like to usually stick together, but that's the thing is we don't know that next guy coming in on a street glide might be the next great chopper guy. He just doesn't know it yet because he hasn't been exposed, right?
Exactly. So, and you don't know where people are at. You don't know if they just got into bikes. You don't know why they got into bikes.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of guys look at custom bikes and they go, I can't afford that. That happens a lot where you get guys that see these wild customs and go, well, I can't really afford to build a bike like that. Or they can't justify it because, well, I can't carry the things that I need on the bike with me when I have that bike.
Mm-hmm.
But you start learning that it's like, compared to brand new bikes, it's really not that expensive.
Yeah, it's not.
No.
Right, you're actually paying significantly less to build custom bikes in a lot of cases.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, there's some wildly expensive stuff, but we talk about wildly expensive knuckleheads going for $60,000. A Harley CVO is $60,000.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but the thing is, a Harley CVO is worth $30,000 in 10 years. The knucklehead might be worth $90,000 in 10 years. So the justification, you probably aren't going to get on your knucklehead and ride coast to coast, but most of the guys on CVOs, for instance, just as a comparable price thing, they're not doing that either.
No, they're going Timmy's.
Well, maybe, or they're going to the dealership, or they're doing the stuff because it's not about, it's not really about. You justify, well, I can do long rides.
Yeah,
I can go coast to coast on this bike, but you got a job, you only get 10 days off. You don't even have the time to go coast to coast, so who cares anyway? Yeah,
their afternoon after supper ride for a couple hours.
And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's like once you start actually going through the justifications, you kind of build up in your own mind why you can't build a bike.
Yeah.
And you actually start to check off the boxes and go, well, I have to ride a bagger because of this. Yeah. And you start going through, it goes, well, actually, that one's not really that true. And I've never done that.
Yeah.
And this is, and then you just...
it's like the mindset they get into.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think a lot of that comes down from, maybe bike shows and biker TV shows and shit.
Oh, God.
When you start riding and start messing around with bikes, you start to realize that most of the time, less is more. Like most of the time, you're on your bike for a few hours. We fuck off on a Sunday for the day.
Yep.
We're going for lunch and shit. So we don't need a bunch of riding gear. We don't need bags to bring water and that kind of shit because we can just stop at a gas station, grab a bottle of water.
Well, that's the thing. So like for me, like even my Softail, like I ride with, when I'm usually on that bike, I'm with guys that they're not all bagger guys, but there's definitely some of the bagger guys, right?
Mm-hmm. And
that bike is, some of them have pretty new stuff and 6 speeds, and that's a 5-speed, and it's carbed, and it's got some of the elements that I like about motorcycles, because to me, motorcycles have always been hot rods.
Yeah, that's how I think of it.
Harleys are hot rods. They're not like I don't buy my my Nissan SUV the same way that I'm gonna go buy a Harley. But a lot of people have that same mentality because you have to have it's got to have GPS, and it's got to have a Bose radio, and it's got to have all this stuff. I don't dislike any of this stuff. Those are great creature comforts. But to me, when I look at cool cars, I think of hot rods or muscle cars that didn't really have any of that stuff anyway.
Exactly.
And I think of an era,
as
right?
an option.
I think of an era. To me,
Yeah.
To me, bikes and hot rods come from my enjoyment of the California culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm so focused on that, and I know there's a New York culture for choppers and all that kind of stuff. But for me, my idea is riding up and down the coast and doing the whole California thing, and that's where hot rods come from, and that's where most of the chopper stuff comes from, right? So
it's crazy. as I got more into pinstriping and art, and you start learning about regions.
Yes.
So where we think a lot of this comes from California, every single state has a different region where, you know, this region in North Carolina might do flames a little bit different.
Yeah.
And like, it's actually pretty crazy of how many hundreds of cultures there are throughout the states that all form mainly off that hot rod culture that comes out of Florida, Texas, you know, the warm states that have this. But, you know, as we hope to travel the states more once it opens up, it's kind of crazy. I want to actually see these kind of regional cultures where it kind of stems from. And, you know, I'm imagining you've been a little bit more traveled than us, that bike culture might.
I've been around. Yeah, and there's more shows now that I've been invited to that I haven't been able to go. That I would like to go just to go and check them out. And I've been invited to Glory Days for 2 years, and I haven't been able to make it down. I think I'm still on the list this year. I think I was talking to the organizer there a couple of months ago, and he goes, "You're still on the list if you want to come." I said, "All right." So I'm hoping maybe I can get down to that this year. So that seems like a pretty good one.
Yeah.
There's one other one too, but I can't remember. What's the one that's down in South Carolina, in Charlotte there, or North Carolina, I guess.
What is that one called?
I think Dice Magazine puts it on. Congregation.
Yeah, I think that's what
Congregation?
it is. Yeah,
Yeah.
something like that.
One of my real good buddies, Dean, he's a wicked photographer out of New York. He uses all these crazy old like wooden cameras from 1,000 years ago, and he was like one of the official Harley photographers, and he does a lot of stuff with Trog. But he's really good buddies. He got me into that show a couple of years ago, and I meant to go down, and then COVID hit. And I was really excited for that show because it's a really neat show, and it's not a huge. I don't know. To me, it doesn't seem like it's this massive thing. It's kind of a cool little collective thing. And Charlotte's a really cool town. So I was looking forward to that one, but then I couldn't go. And then Glory Days, same thing. Glory Days seems to have grown a lot. From a lot of the pictures I see, it looks massive. So I'm really curious to get down to
Glory
that.
Days does look really good.
Yeah, I've known a bunch of people that have gone down to that. There was some Canadians that went down a few years ago, and it looks great. Like I really would like to do that show. I'm just kind of waiting.
See how stuff goes, right?
I mean, it's nice seeing a lot more Canadians getting down there and getting invited down there too.
Yeah,
right?
well,
Like it's
they kind of, like I said, like it's an incestuous kind of group of people. So the same people go to a lot of shows, but you can't like these guys are like you or me. They're not millionaires. They can't afford to build a new bike every year.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of them will build a bike that they really like. And the only way to build another bike is to sell that bike.
yes,
That's kind of the position that I'm in. If I want to build another bike, I can't just go and buy another bike. I have to sell a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
absolutely.
And kind of like justify it that way, right? And that's kind of what I do. Like I sold probably 3 or 4 Harleys last year. Nice stuff. But it wasn't what I needed at the time, and I needed some of the money, and I moved some of the money into other stuff. So I like to keep my money floating at least in some kind of bike project.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because then it's not gone, because you have a tangible thing that you can
Absolutely.
either keep or sell to do something else.
Yeah.
You don't have to like pull it out of your bank account.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or pay rent with it.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Fuck rent.
So you get these guys that have they built these really beautiful bikes, and they go, well, they're not necessarily a one and done guy, but they're not going to get rid of that bike in a year and build something new.
No.
So even the American shows, as they grow, they have to bring in
New people.
New blood.
Yeah.
And you need a lot of young guys coming in too, right? Like,
Well, there's a lot of young guys. Yeah, you get guys now, like you think Freedom Machine, this will be, I want to say the seventh?
Yeah, I think it's 7th.
Yeah.
7 years ago, look, you guys were talking about the People's Champ, right?
Yeah.
A bunch of those builder guys, like you look at their ages, some of them are like 21, 22.
Yeah.
I think
7 years ago, those guys were like 14 years old.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So a lot of the guys, like I've been to Born Free. Born Free's a great show. Grant is a great guy. I hung out with him a few times through the Trog stuff, and super nice guy. He, the guys who are building 7 years ago, there's lots of those guys that are still coming, but not all of them, because you can't build that show's been going on for I think 12 or 13 years now.
Yeah,
this will
exactly.
be 13.
Yeah,
coming
12,
up.
13 years. So you get guys that are building bikes 13 years ago that are still building bikes, but those guys are not like, they're not all, you got guys in their 20s that are now in their 40s.
Yeah.
Right? Mid 40s.
Yeah.
And they got 3, 4 kids, and they got houses, and they're on their 3rd wife, and they're like, there's a lot of life that's happened in that span.
Absolutely.
So people kind of see these shows as one thing, but it's not, because they've spanned quite a long time now.
And they evolve, right?
Yeah.
And then families with kids will get involved.
Yeah.
Hopefully my kid someday will get involved. But Both of them have been too lazy, but
What we are seeing is a resurgence of vintage. So I think there's a
Yeah.
lot of younger guys that are more into the chop scene
Yes.
than there was, say, in the 90s.
Yeah.
Well, they were more steered into the wrong kind of chop scene,
Well,
right? With
it's-
OCC and
well, but
Big
some
Wheel
of,
Chop.
Well, not so much the 90s. OCC came, I would say,
Late
in the
2000s, early
so late-
2000s,
later
yeah.
but
2000s.
a lot of those kids today might have grew up with OCC
Like,
and
I
Jesse
am-
James because their dad was watching that
yeah,
show,
I
right?
am one of those.
And he's
kids,
in
yeah, right?
Lacona
So am I.
driving a bagger today, but that kid saw Jesse James building something on fucking TV.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. So like when I was growing up, I watched all the biker build-offs,
Yeah.
and I watched Orange County Choppers religiously, and I watched the Motorcycle Mania that Jesse James did, and I mean I grew up in a fairly fairly Christian household that was into bikes, but like that stuff was very like out there to me, but I was like, this is awesome. Like I really latched onto that stuff, and even stuff like Orange County Choppers, you go, yeah, they built some pretty goofy stuff.
Yeah.
Fine, I understand, but and the other truth of a lot of that stuff is too is they didn't really build a lot of stuff. I mean, they used all rolling thunder frames from
Yeah,
Quebec,
they ordered the stuff.
and
They ordered.
but they started putting these bikes together, and they were a manufacturer, and they were building production bikes, and they were selling them, making a lot of money, and they got a TV show out of it because they were successful. But what that did was it opens you up, and you go, I didn't even know you could do any of this stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're going, I didn't know that you could put your own gas tank on your own frame and with your own motor and ride that down the road. That's awesome. And then that led into biker build-off stuff, right? So yeah, there was lots of cheeseball guys built like you know.
Absolutely, but
But then there was the Indian Larrys.
Yeah.
And then there was the Chicas, right? There was
Yeah.
the guys that were going, holy crap.
Yeah.
That guy just built this awesome old bike. I'd never seen anything like that.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not exactly the same style as what's popular now.
Yep.
But it's the idea, right?
Yeah.
And that,
The idea.
and they all
That
evolved
eventually-
from something, right?
Exactly.
Like the 80s or the 2000s choppers came from the 80s and 90s where tires started to get fatter and fatter, and then you got these big long stretch choppers with these huge fucking rear ends, 300 fucking
Yeah,
inch tires.
360s. And
Yeah, like
and you're right. And it's exaggerated because that's what our society does in general,
Oh, yeah.
right? When we'll take something good and we'll push it to the very limit of what's acceptable.
Yeah.
And then it dies.
Yeah.
Yeah,
just
but
done.
then
Because-
a new age group come in and go,
Right.
we're going back traditional.
Yeah.
So then they'll go back to the 60s and
That's
70s and start
sacred
putting
steel.
today's day and age and today's spin on what
Right.
they're building. Right?
Exactly.
So all those shows eventually led to Sacred Steel, where we start seeing panhead choppers getting built.
Yeah.
Right. And that I can say, like 2016, that show drops. That was the pivotal point for me where I'm like, these are my bikes. These are this is the shit I love. Like I've been
You
watching
heard it here. The first bike that inspired him was called the Dutch Rudder.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he loves it.
I love the
Loves
rudder.
It's not gay if you look each other
In
in
the
the
good
eye.
mood, like, and what you saw were a bunch of dudes just fucking hanging out, shooting the shit, but then building these fucking rad
What's that?
60s chops.
I mean,
That's
for me, it came back from finding from the Horse magazine and finding
Yeah.
the Chopper Underground crew, right? Like I've been hanging out with some of those guys 15 years now, right? So and realizing you could take an old Triumph, you could take an old fucking XS 400 and build a little chop out of it for $1,000,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
the backyard smokeout was what got me to thinking, fuck, maybe I'll just start building bikes. And I started grabbing every fucking CX 500 I can find and every Honda Matic I can find.
Every
Because that's
Honda
what I could-
Matic,
yeah.
everyone.
But that's what I could afford at the
Yeah,
time, right?
yeah.
Like I
Well,
couldn't
that's the thing,
afford
right?
anything else,
That's
right?
true.
So
I
I'd
started on
run into
Vista.
Michigan and meet up with some guys from the smokeout and buy some of their shit and
Well, that's where-
swap stuff.
I didn't even start with bikes. Like I got bikes within the last couple of years now, right? Like I was like rock crawlers. Like everything I've kind of leaned to is very minimalistic. Like rock crawlers where it's just cage, motor, and wheels. You know what I mean? Rat rods, very basic, all motor. You know what I mean? You throw license plates on the floor for your flooring. You know what I mean? Then you look at choppers, and even the choppers I'm into, skinny, home garage built. You know what I mean? Instead of buying a gas tank, you're building one. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. And
It's because you're cheap, fucker.
And I'm poor as fuck. So, but you have two bikes in my garage, so suck it.
and his work gave him a TIG welder.
Well, I think that like we like to categorize guys as chopper guys or bagger guys
Yeah.
or all this stuff because you kind of find your tribe, your group, right, and you kind of hang with that group. But the reality is, what we're really into is custom bikes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? You're into
Exactly.
customization,
Yep.
and there is subgenres of that people prefer. Like some people prefer to do Triumphs, or I prefer Harleys. I like Harleys. I don't really want to do other stuff. And someone goes, "Oh, you're a Harley snob." Well, yeah, I am a Harley snob, but it doesn't mean I don't. It doesn't mean I don't appreciate other stuff.
Yeah,
it's just that I don't have that interest.
Yeah,
but then you have guys that buy stock bikes, and that's a different thing. So even guys that start, even guys that just customize a little bit on their stock bike, that's something.
Yeah,
it's maybe 100%. Only dipping your toe into the pond. But it's better than staying away from the pond, right? Or not riding bikes at all.
And at the end of the day, your little custom parts you're buying is putting food on the table for another family, because they're making those parts to sell to you to put on. So there's a big circle that kind of
Corey
goes
Ness,
with it,
I heard, is really struggling lately.
Well,
yeah,
I'm looking for a
buy
wheel.
some floorboards, guys.
I'm looking for
pennies a day.
looking for a wheel hub for one of my rims, and the only one I could really find is an Arlen Ness at $500 US, and I just won't run that rim. I spent $100 on the rim. I'm not spending $500 on the
I was
wheel
looking
hub.
at foot pegs, and the only one that came up was Arlen Ness.
But
It was like
again, back to the custom
$335
thing.
for foot pegs. I was
I
like,
mean,
nah.
even the baggers versus chopper episode we did last time.
You really are interviewing everybody now, eh?
Yeah, I know, right?
Sometimes you gotta let the
But
riffraff.
even the guys, we make fun of the comment is, the baggers are the new choppers, and we laugh at it. No, you're not. But in reality is they're customizing their baggers just like the way chopper guys are customizing their bikes. And
Well,
it's-
I can't believe I'm going to say it.
I
But
could respect the fact that at least they're spending money and getting out on two wheels.
the fab work to go into a big wheel bagger is extensive and takes a lot of skill. And I'm saying this right now, that it may not be my cup of tea. Sometimes they look a little ridiculous and over the top, but someone might look at our chops and say the exact same thing. And you got to respect the guy for pushing limits with bags, the fiberglass work that goes into dropping those bags, and then running a 30-inch wheel, and then having a functioning bike.
And the leg muscles to hold that motherfucker up.
And the budget to buy all the Affliction shirts.
Well, that's part of the thing too. Is you go like a custom bagger. Yeah, it's a custom bike, and you're right. A lot of them, if you see them like mid build, the work is extensive. They have to do a lot of stuff. There's a lot of parts, a lot more parts that go into a custom bagger than would say a chopper. Because you have all these other elements, and a lot of them are newer bikes. So you have all the electrical elements. Then they're adding sound systems and all this other stuff that goes into it. Fine, but the difference too is, I mean, those bikes are $100,000 plus.
Oh yeah. Triple the money. Yeah.
And a lot of those bikes are not built in someone's garage. Now, I'm not saying they're not all that, but a lot of them are built in a professional shop setting. They're built by builder guys that have this thing. So the stuff that we're into is custom, same as that, but we're into more of the stuff you can do yourself. Yeah. Right?
Like if we break down on the side of the road, we're searching, we know roughly what it's going to be at the time and how to fix it.
Right.
You can wires.
Yeah, you're like, well, my exhaust fell off because I didn't put any bolts in my stupid bike.
Exactly.
So it's too cheap to go to Canadian Tire.
Anybody got any zip ties? I need to reattach
My plumbing tie wires.
So that you're right, but from the other side, like the bagger stuff is, you're right, it's custom and all this stuff, but the differentiation is that the garage build culture that we're kind of into, that lends itself more to the vintage stuff. Now what we're seeing, I would say, as time goes on with the vintage stuff, especially with the increase in price, it's bleeding more into the money side. Right. Yeah, you're getting money guys into choppers because these not all the big shops, but guys are going, okay, well, you want a crazy knucklehead chopper that's molded and has amazing paint on it. Yeah, it's not going to be $20,000 anymore. Now it's going to be $70,000. Yeah, or $80,000 or $100,000 if you're Jason Momoa for some reason.
Exactly.
Hey, he held the wrench to the guy that was actually building the bike. So that's some credit, right?
Well, it's when he was in Toronto doing all his stuff here. My buddy Adam did a lot of his maintenance work on his fleet.
Well, he was out this way a lot, right?
Oh yeah,
he's out here all the time.
Yeah,
like so I think Blackridge, he pretty much set up shop in.
No, he did like they went to see him. That was
once.
Thing.
Oh, so that's all bullshit.
He bought they gave him like an electric bike or something because he was contracted by Harley to do some of their commercials and actually produce and direct some of their commercials. So he was on Harley payroll. Yeah, it wasn't that he was hanging out at Harley; it's that they were actually paying him. He had a sponsorship going on. They had a prototype of the Pan America, the off-road, that was at my buddy's shop. It was kind of neat. My buddy studded all the tires for the commercials and stuff like that. And he's got a couple of cool knuckleheads. He had that silver surfer bike that Max Schaaf built that he bought off him, and then this other bike that Cycle Zombies built. It was a Panhead, I think, when he bought it, but then he put a knucklehead in it or something.
Yeah, something like that.
It's called like the red tie.
Yeah.
They're cool, really cool bikes. But like, yeah, like Adam did a bunch of work on them. He did a good job with that stuff.
Tell us about Adam's shop. He's got a pretty cool shop.
Oh, and he just changed locations too. He was in another building, kind of, I think it was at Tiverton, and he had kind of this old school, really cool old building. It was just a lot. It was a very large building, and it was, being an old building, you have a lot of maintenance issues. It was kind of, and I think for him too, he filled it with his collection. So he had this collection around him, and I think it was a little bit distracting for him. So he decided to move, and he's got more of like a workspace now, and he's been banging it out there. So he's been doing really well. I talk to him pretty much every day. Yeah.
What's his shop called?
Black Horse Cycle. Yeah, Black Horse Cycle. And he's one of my best friends. Basically between him and Jason Parker in Brampton there. Jason Parker race cars, but he builds a lot of bikes. I mean, those are two of my, like, I would say they're both two of my biggest influences, but also two of my best friend, like closest friends within the chopper stuff.
Nice.
They both helped me out a ton. Jason built my motor and for my pan and has worked on a few of my bikes, and Adam's worked on my stuff, and I've traveled with Adam a bunch in the States and with the Trog stuff and just, whatever else.
Nice.
Yeah, super great guys.
Just not the guy to call at 3 a.m. to move your pan. The fence.
Yeah.
That night. Maybe other nights, but not that
Well,
night.
I got an engine heading off to Jason hopefully soon.
Yeah.
As soon as he gets some free time, I'll drop it off. But
Yeah, I'm going to get him to do a frame for me, I think, here coming up soon for this shovelhead thing over here. So
I would say he's like an Ontario legend. Getting at a point.
Yeah,
like,
well,
as far as engine builds go, absolutely.
Yeah,
I would say it goes far. I would say he's even like a North America legend.
Yeah.
Because he's kind of one of those guys that people don't understand the actual scope of the stuff he works on.
No.
Because he's got a name. He's got a name in the industry, but he's not like him and Adam both are not. They're not self-promotion guys. They want the work to speak for kind of what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I think that the struggle is always you want to, because so many people, especially in this stuff, it's fake it till you make it.
Oh yeah.
Right? 100%.
It's
Social
fake it
media.
So social media is huge. You got a bike shop name. You got all this stuff. I could very easily make this look like a hot shop, like I'm moving stuff. But I'm not. I'm doing my own stuff. I'm just kind of messing around.
Yeah.
I'm mostly just sitting here and fart and drink rum and stuff. Right?
Which is still not a bad thing.
It's not a bad thing, but I don't really have that desire for people to think I'm something I'm not.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Where those guys, they want their work to speak for themselves, and like Parker barely, like he's got a social media platform with a bunch of followers, and Adam's got quite a few followers now too.
But they almost never
post.
Yeah.
They never post, and it's not because they're not doing anything. And I think that's what people need to understand. It's that they're busy.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Every time I call Jason, I'm like, hey man, when can I
If
get
you
my
got a
engine?
guy
I'll
that's
give me a couple
posting
weeks.
15 pictures a day, it's usually one bike.
Yeah.
A lot of guys that post one picture a year, they'll post the 60 bikes they built in the last 2 months.
Yeah, yeah.
Like that's the difference, right?
Yeah.
And that's the trap of social media that people fall into. You have to really seek out, and you have to go and see what's going on.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people get into situations where you trust a shop that doesn't really have anything going on, and then they just outsource to these guys anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you're like, you don't really get like the full idea of it, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm really into supporting the guys that are at the core of this,
Yeah.
and Jason is 100% of that, and Adam too.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
That's one thing I've always saw is like when somebody's like, oh yeah, I can paint that or I can hardtail that. It's like, well, show me something you've done. You know what I mean? Like kind of like, let's see.
Yeah.
Show me and don't tell me.
Yep.
Basically,
I mean, when I went
can
looking
weld,
for someone to
show
build
me.
my engine, is I got a lot of different shops. I'll go here, go there, but the one name that came up quite a bit was, oh, I had Jason do my engine. I had Jason do my engine. So those are the people I listen to. Not, oh, I heard this guy was good, or I heard this guy was good. It's I want to know if he built your engine and do you have a complaint? That's it,
The
right?
thing-
And
yeah,
not
well, the
one
thing
complaint I
the
ever
thing with
heard.
Jason is, I mean, you go to Jason's shop and you go, well, if you want to you got a panhead, whatever. You want to get your panhead rebuilt. There's lots of shops that can do it.
Yep.
Okay, and that's fine. I'm not saying that they can't. And I would, there's varying levels of quality based on whatever. And a lot of it is a lot of bike shops. There's not a lot of money in panhead stuff because you can't buy all the expensive upgraded parts that you can for a lot of the modern motors.
Yeah.
Like you start getting into modern motors and you're into like thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars for basic upgrades, right? Where you can do full everything on a panhead for, it's still going to be a chunk of money, but you have the best of everything. To get the best of everything on like a twin cam, you need 25 grand into
Oh
it.
yeah,
100%.
yeah.
And people don't think that. People go, wow, I could never spend 9 grand on making my panhead perfect. Well, you'd spend 20 grand on making a twin cam like crazy.
or buying a $30,000 bike,
right, exactly,
and still running into issues on the side of the road where you know somebody like Jason, you're going to get a
he's going to stand
reliability.
by.
That's a functional
right?
He's
motor,
standing by his stuff,
Yeah.
and the other thing too is like you go to a lot of shops like, oh yeah, I built panheads. Well, and they go, show me one that you've done recently.
Yeah.
Oh, I used to do them all the time. I know what I'm doing. Jason has
like 6.
30 lined up
Yeah.
right there. You can see them.
Yeah.
And they're coming off, and you're going, this is what I'm building. And it doesn't matter if it's an iron head or a pan head or a shovel head or a knuckle head or whatever. It's coming off. He's even doing some Evo stuff.
Yep.
If you can talk him into it.
I tried.
Yeah. And it's coming off, and everything is like, no. I've never ever seen anyone look at a motor that he's built and go, it's always the same thing. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, the transformations are insane.
Yeah.
Holy crap! And if you really let him go with it, like a lot of people throttle him, right? Because they're like, well, I don't want it to be perfect because it's going back into kind of a rough looking bike.
Yeah.
And he's like, it's hard for him because he wants to make it like
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, he threw one up had patina. The guy wanted a little bit of patina to it,
Yeah,
and
the
you could
69,
read in his post that he was like, oh, because that guy, he wants to make it perfect. You're a craftsman.
When I was at a shop a couple of weeks ago, and he was working on that motor, and it was the same thing because he's like taking beautiful brand new parts and like bead blasting them to make them look older and like rubbing some dirt on them. He's like, this is hard.
Yeah.
He goes, he wants me to match it. And I'm like, oh. He goes, and he can do it. He goes, I don't care. Like, it doesn't matter. He goes, but it's almost more work.
Yeah.
Because it's almost more work to make it look crappy than it would be to make it look perfect.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And there's a sense for that old look feel, right?
Yeah.
I get that. You want that vintage look.
I like when that look is earned naturally.
Yeah, exactly.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Rather than kind of like build it around kind of junky stuff.
Start fresh. Put the miles on
Right.
to patina.
That's not
Give
how
me
a
a
lot of
shiny
this stuff
motor,
started
yeah.
out. A lot of the stuff with time and age got to look rough.
Yeah.
But initially it looked perfect.
Yeah.
So bring it back to perfect and then wear it out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you like, well, it's funny that I say that because then you have Adam, who's kind of on the opposite spectrum of that, and he builds bikes that look like they've been around for all this time, and he takes brand new parts and makes them look ancient. It's a whole other art form.
Absolutely.
So it's really funny that it's the guys have kind of this opposite of this opposite of the spectrum thing. And there isn't, and I wouldn't say one is better than the other. It's just a very different kind of way of looking at things, right?
Yep. And for me, like for my iron head that Jason's going to do, I want that show look to the engine.
Yeah.
But the reliability, because I'm going to ride it. I'm going to ride the shit out of it, right?
Yeah.
So
He's got a couple iron heads, man, that just like iron heads. I mean, I'm not a big fan of iron heads. I don't mess around with iron heads because it's kind of the same issue as like British bikes. Is I find the bikes to be kind of small.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
I think
100%.
they're cool, but I'd rather big twins because they
They fill out their.
they're a little bit more like sizable to me. I'm a
Yeah.
big guy. I like to have a little bit bigger bike. You can make them big. You can make iron heads bigger, but I just like the separated, the divorce motor from the transmission
absolutely.
and that look, right? But I mean, if you want to put money into an iron head, you can make some crazy stuff.
absolutely. You're just never going to get that money back.
Yeah.
And I'm fully realistic.
But
I
you know
know
what?
that money's never coming
Getting
back.
money
but-
back in the custom world is a fool's game.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
100%.
You do this stuff, the best, coolest stuff was never built because it was cost effective. It doesn't make any sense. None of the stuff was. It's an expression, right? You build the stuff because you want it to be like some guys want like really like, simple stuff and cut down stuff, and that's an expression in itself. But a lot of custom stuff is really out there and really cool, and it's an expression. It's not about like resale value.
Yeah.
Once you start thinking about resale value, everything gets kneecapped,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right?
Then you're just doing it as a job. You're
Right, then
buying,
not-
flipping,
then you
buying,
buy-
flipping. Right?
If you're gonna flip, you don't build.
No.
You flip stuff. You make all your
You
money
get
when
it to
buy
run and you send it.
Yeah, you build. You make. I always say this. You always make all of your money when you're buying the bike.
Yeah.
If you got to put all this work into it to make money, you're not making any money.
No.
The only way is if you win the lottery and buy a fucking pan for $3,900.
Yeah, I wouldn't rely on that.
No, that's the crazy thing about this bike is that'll never. I won't say never, but the chances of that ever happening again are
Absolutely.
slim to none to never.
Although I did buy a all original '69 shovelhead one owner bike last fall for $7,000.
All right, I'm going home. Fucking done.
So the direction you're seeing of custom building, how do you think it's going to go over the next 5 years?
Well, it's becoming, because of the internet, I don't know if there's any one trend that's kind of dominating anymore. I think it splits off because you get pockets of people, right? Yeah. But I think one thing we will see resurgence of is this big wheel like chopper stuff.
Yeah.
Because like a lot of this stuff, and you can see it with cars too. Like his muscle cars, for instance, are like crazy money now.
Oh,
like
yeah.
69 Camaros for $100,000.
Yeah.
Well, the reason why that's happening is because you're having that generation that grew up with those cars for $1,000, coming of age, having real money, and wanting to relive those glory days.
Yep.
When I grew up on big wheel choppers.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of guys that grew up in that same time that are going to be like, you know what? I could never afford a chopper, CFL frame Jesse James chopper. Yeah. So I'm going to recreate this now that I'm 40 or 50. I'm going to recreate this. I'm not 40 or 50, by the way. Yeah. But I'm just saying,
I am.
Yeah. But I mean, when my generation gets to that point, I think there'll be a thing that comes back around and go, I could never afford this when I was a kid. So now I can buy it.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, everything comes in cycles, right?
Oh, yeah, it's all cycles. Man.
Right now, we're at the 60s and 70s chopper cycle.
And I think we're kind of I think it's even peaked a little bit, and we're kind of in a bit of a decline.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which is good, because now I can start getting parts I want for cheap.
Well, maybe that's a bit of the COVID thing too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, like maybe a little bit, because people are hurt. Like, I see a lot more stuff for sale, and I mean, the prices are insane.
Oh,
Absolutely.
God, yeah.
But you see a lot of options.
Yeah.
So if you have money, you have availability, but it's you don't have the availability because a lot of people just can't afford to pay what people are asking.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right?
Like I had a 47 knucklehead motor that I got, and I sold it a few months ago because it wasn't complete, and I was starting to look for the pieces that I was missing. And I'm like, by the time that I finished this motor, I could have built 2 shovel heads.
Yeah.
I'm like, why am I? And it's not. And to be honest, I'd rather have a knucklehead than a shovel head, but not that much.
Yeah.
You know, that the cost benefit analysis didn't really pan out for that. You know, you can't.
Yeah, and it's a lot of work. If it's not a complete engine, by the time you hunt shit down, and
it's a lot of work.
You got to do a lot of fucking homework.
I have, and I would say I have friends and connections that makes that search a little easier, because I see the stuff more than the average guy would.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's available to me, but I can't just be like, oh yeah, $4,000 for a couple of beat up heads that I need to re-weld is perfectly fair.
Yeah.
Oh, it doesn't have any. $1,000 for the tin covers. Perfect. That's awesome. Let's just sign me up.
Yeah.
Totally.
You're $20,000 into an engine.
What's $1,000 to a guy that makes $40,000 a year?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's why I don't own a pan today. Or
Yeah.
because I just have a bunch of little bikes, and that's it.
Yeah, and I think like I've done a lot of like trading up and stuff over the years. Like I bought a lot of stuff that I don't really care for to trade into pieces of other things that I do like.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That happens a lot. And I've gotten, I don't do it a lot. I'm not like a serial trader upper like some guys are, and they turn into like a business.
Yeah.
Because I'm not really trying to like fund this lifestyle. I'm just trying to fund my own little hobby.
Yeah.
Some guys try to turn it into like this whole thing, and they're shipping
Trying to pay a mortgage.
They're
and
shipping
shit.
containers of bikes to Australia and Japan and all this stuff, and that's cool. Like I'm not knocking it, but it's just like that's not what I'm into. Like I do really like this stuff, but I don't like everything, and I'll buy stuff that I don't really care for if it'll get me into something I do.
Yeah.
Right. If the price is there,
And I think that's the kind of the bikes I've grabbed as well too, right? Like I picked up a Triumph that I couldn't pass up the deal, right? It was just too fucking $2,200 for a fucking '67 Triumph. You just don't pass it up, right?
Yeah.
So I bought like what's the first year Goldwing? 76 or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
I bought like a 76 Goldwing for like $150.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, once my Triumph's done, that'll get flipped. I'll make probably a couple thousand off of it.
Yeah.
Worst case scenario, right?
Yeah.
Ironhead, no different. I paid $2,000 for an Ironhead, and if I put $5,000 into it, I'm going to ride the bike for
$1,500.
Yeah. Exactly.
I'm down $5,000.
Wait a minute.
But again, I'm not really planning on flipping the Ironhead. I plan on riding it and beating the shit out of it, and maybe my kid will take it at some point.
And
right?
the thing too is like when you put money into something like that, you never lose it all. Like you lose some of it a lot of the time. Like even my Panhead, I got probably more into that bike than I'll ever get out of it. I would think.
Oh, yeah.
maybe one day that won't be the case, but right now I think that probably is the case.
I don't know. What do you think? Rough estimate you've got into that bike?
20?
Yeah, I don't know. You throw that up right now on Marketplace, and you're going to get 25, 30, no problem.
But the memories that it brings, just make it
that'll
priceless.
never. I mean,
that's the one thing. That's how you get paid. Where you're not.
I mean, honestly, I'd probably buy your bike for 25, just because I know it's built right. I know it's ready to go.
I spent the money on the good stuff. Like I'm proud to have a motor built by Jason in that bike. Because not only because he's my buddy, but because I know what it is. You know?
Yeah,
exactly.
And it carries something. And I have and I made some of the stuff on that bike too. Like I made the seat, and the rear fender was like, I was hanging out with the lowbrow guys down at their warehouse there, and they ran over that thing with a forklift, and I got it for like $1.
Nice.
And they're like, yeah. I'm like, all right, I think it was $5. I was down for one of their swap meets at their warehouse years ago. And we're kind of hanging out, and they had this they literally ran over the fender with a forklift. I was like, I don't know, $5. Like, yeah, whatever. $5. Cool. So I bought it, and I just
put it back and
I straightened it out and made it, and it worked. I mean, it's not a panhead now. Yeah. I made the sissy bar, I bought that sissy bar and cut it up and did some stuff to it, and yeah, nice. I don't know. You just kind of work with, when you don't really know what you're doing, it's interesting to see kind of what you come up with.
Yeah.
Because you don't really have any rules in your head about what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
So you just go with what kind of looks good to you.
Yeah. Well, these guys always make fun of me because I've stolen 3 different railings from people's front porches because I make sissy
iron gate.
Because I make sissy bar steel out of them.
That's fucking funny. Yeah, he does steal shit too, right? He'll come in my garage. Oh, that's not bolted down.
That's our rule.
We're in Montreal, and in Montreal, where we were staying, they got a lot of the iron twisty staircases, and he's out there with a tape measure. Do you think I can file through this with my key? Damn.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's kind of how I got that ride a Harley Davidson sign, actually. It was at the 115th anniversary for Harley Davidson. They did the Bradford Beach Brawl, which is cool ride. And a bunch of the racers and stuff got those or whatever. There was a stack of them being passed around, and I kind of missed the boat on that. So there was a bunch of them hanging around. I was like, I knew the owner. I was like, I'm not trying to I'd never want to steal from Mel. Mel's not a bad guy. He's always treated me real fair. And I was just like, I kind of want one of those signs. And he's bothering me every time I post a picture. He posts stolen banner alert underneath it. But I walked in. I was shirtless and walked out of the cargo trailer we were sleeping illegally in at the lake, and just walked over, and I literally gorillaed the fence open. And I just grabbed it, and ripped it off, and everybody's laughing because it's the security hadn't shown up yet. I was and I just pull the thing off. And bundle it up and I'll have to walk back. Well, I got a sign. Everybody's
I don't got a shirt, but I got a sign.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Quite the thing.
So, any plans for future build? I see you got a digger there. I know you mentioned you're parting it out, but
yeah, the digger I bought off a good buddy of mine. Actually, I didn't really buy it. I traded him. I bought kind of some horse trading stuff. I bought a bike off Dom, who you guys interviewed. And it was just a random thing. It was just a deal. And I knew that a buddy of mine was looking for a kind of a bagger just to cruise around. He's a chopper guy too, but he just wanted something kind of rough and you can throw the wife on and go. So I was still running, I think, and it was price was real right, and I just basically traded him for that. He'd had that for a long time, and I'd seen it at a shop. And my original plan was I was gonna hold on to it for a bit, but I was actually kind of maybe thinking about just selling it, or selling it and moving into something else. Obviously, I'm not really into it's got a big turbo on it and all this stuff. It's not really my thing. It's not really something I would be this is awesome. And it's a cool bike, but it's just not the era that I'm really attached to. Yep. And even though I want to build something really cool out of it, it's not necessarily practical. That's not really the vein that I'm super into.
Yeah.
What's the engine in that thing?
That's it. It's a shovel head. I don't know what year. But it's got a bunch of crazy stuff to it. All the cylinders are machined on it. And
it's fucking cool.
It's got that big mag set up on it, which is kind of neat.
Yeah.
Somebody spent money on that motor.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
And it's got a ratchet top in it. So it's got some good components.
Yep.
So initially I was going to just do a different front end and kind of do something with kind of the pieces.
Mm-hmm.
But a good buddy of mine's interested in the digger setup, so I'm probably gonna keep the drive line and get Parker to do me a nice, like one of his hardtail frames.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
If you change your mind, let me know.
Okay.
I may be
I'll be
interested
all
in
over
that
that
drive
too.
line for sure.
Yeah, and I want to do like I like the pan and stuff, so I have like a bunch of like rear drum brake components still kicking around. So I want to do like a shovel head frame, but with rear drum brake and some other funky stuff that I like. Like I want it to be custom, but I don't really want it to be like I don't want it to like scream this is a custom part.
Yeah.
I want to do like cool stuff from years that I like, but kind of do it all in one bike.
Yep.
Even though it's not necessarily right for that
Yeah, it doesn't
particular.
What's right
particular era.
anymore?
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. But that's the kind of custom stuff I like.
Yeah.
Because I like kind of cherry picking all the different elements of, bikes over a certain period of time and putting it all together. That's really cool. Because often, a lot of custom bikes you get stuck with, the basic setup, and then you just like do cool paint and some other stuff.
Yeah.
So it's kind of neat to do some more like, some more custom elements that are weren't even close to being found on those years, right?
It's nice. It's a nice looking digger. I mean, again, I'm not much of a digger guy either, but
Yeah, it's cool.
Well, you can appreciate it, right? It's the same with things
I
like
think
we
it
were
looks
saying,
better in
right?
person than it does in pictures.
Yeah,
Pictures it looks kind of funky, like but when you get it kind of beside it, and it's kind of low and lean. It's kind of neat.
Oh, for
looking.
sure. Yeah.
I mean, it'd be a nice little bar hopper, I guess, or maybe take it to the drag strip or something. It'd be kind of cool, but
Yeah. It's just not, it's not.
as an everyday shoot downtown Toronto, I probably wouldn't want to ride it.
Turbo spooling on the DVP.
No.
while
Have
you
that
sit
turbo
there.
open up on you and you're fucking in traffic.
No, I want to do I think just like a kick only shovel head with nice clean elements. Something kind of. I got a knucklehead Springer buried away somewhere that I might throw on that and
Nice.
some other stuff. So I have some ideas for it, and just like I don't want it to be like as big and kind of like as long as my pan is, but I want it to be like nice. I want to do something really nice with it, but I want it to be really nice and clean, but a little bit simpler. Not with the flake and all the stuff and all the elements. I want it to be like clean and simple, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of difficulty sometimes in doing simplicity.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Anything else to add? Anything you guys want to ask Lee about?
Well, I think covered a lot of bases.
Nice.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Nice.
I think we'll segue into the next week with
So yeah,
top 5 here.
yeah. So we're trying to put a top 5 playlist together on Spotify,
Mm-hmm.
just to to kind of get a feel on the music scene within our culture or subculture, anyways, on the chopper scene. So
So us three have already posted our 5 songs.
Yep.
And they're absurdly different.
yeah, absolutely.
Completely different.
Yeah.
So we do have a playlist on Spotify called Sketchy Chopper Society. It's an open
I saw it
playlist.
on there, yeah.
We want everybody to put their top 5 chopper, and I put that in quotes.
What you ride with in your helmet,
or
what
you work
what
with
you're
in their
wrenching
shop.
on, what's
Yeah.
going on in your shop.
Yeah.
Those 5 songs that really just like fuck yeah, like when it comes on your playlist, you're like, this is.
You just crank the
Wanna do
throttle
some
and
shit.
go.
Yeah.
I listen to so much different stuff.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
what
it's-
you were
Yeah,
saying.
like years and years ago, I used to tour in a metal band, and we did like a big cross Canada tour and some other stuff. So I definitely really like music, and I listen to all kinds of different music. But I say when I'm working on stuff, it's got to be a little bit more mellow, or else I'm like just swearing and yelling.
Oh, yeah.
You got Megadeth
Yeah.
on while
Yeah.
you fucking rap.
Yeah, oh
Yeah,
yeah.
I
Smash
mean,
in the pan with ratchet.
If I put on something like real heavy, like yeah.
Voivod.
Yeah, no. If I'm trying to like put something together and like every time I die is on, I'm like I'm smashing my knuckles. And stuff immediately.
Yeah, I mean, my playlist, I think I ran a little bit of Sex Pistols, a little bit of Guns N' Roses.
Old man stuff.
Well, again, I'm at that era where I grew up in the 70s and 80s punk, right? So that's kind of what you're getting out of my playlist. So yeah, it's vast different. So anybody out there want to jump on, definitely throw up your 5 songs and we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, we'll touch base on it on our next recording
Yeah.
on Twan's birthday spectacular.
Oh, yeah.
And we going to start a new segment called the Karen segment
Oh,
for,
Karen's Corner.
Karen's Corner. Yeah.
for fucking
Mike has a lot of Karen moments. So now we
My
gotta-
first fucking Karen moment is like the Kitchener McDonald's doesn't want to wrap a fucking wrap.
so much that he returned it and got his money back twice.
So fuck you, Chad at McDonald's.
any
that's
shout-outs?
it for Karen's
Any
Corner.
shout-outs you want to do, Lee? Anybody out there you want to say hey to? And
Well, just the guys I already talked about. Shout out to Adam and Jay and those guys and the Free Machine guys. Jay and Neil and Evo and Drew, and just everybody, man. You know, I miss a lot of people.
Yeah.
A lot of people I haven't
Absolutely.
seen in a long time. I'm ready to hang out again. You know, it's like let's do something. Let's go.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, it's been a weird couple of years. I feel like
It's like a Twilight Zone. Like it's just been so fucking odd.
No, it'll be so good when we all get to kind of reunite and get back together.
Yeah.
And I'd say like I wouldn't say my attitude was sour leading up to the pandemic stuff, but I was getting maybe a little bit like maybe a little too choosy with what I was doing. I was like, I don't want to do that. You know, I was kind of like sloughing a lot of stuff off because I didn't really want to make the effort anymore because you kind of get to a point where you're doing a lot of stuff and then you're kind of like, I don't want to do anything.
Yeah.
But it's important sometimes to do some stuff, you know, like you got to just like make yourself go, make yourself have a good time because that's what keeps the stuff going.
Yeah.
And the more things you kind of turn your nose up to, I find then they go away.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, there's nothing to do.
Yeah.
Well, that's because you never went.
And COVID's kind of opened my eyes up to a lot of that shit too, right?
Yeah.
Like I lead a pretty busy life, right? With work, side business with the wife, trying to build bikes and shit. It's you tend to kind of just go, you know what? It's a Tuesday night. I don't feel like going out.
Right.
You know, fuck that shit. But now when you couldn't go out and couldn't do anything, you're like, fuck, I kind of wish that Tuesday night.
Exactly. You're like, because you spend too many Tuesday nights alone in your house and you're going, you know what, I could do for a Tuesday night at some, espresso,
bike night at
espresso and whiskey and barbershop.
Blackstock's starting real good right now.
I'll take anything, man.
Yeah.
Show me a strip joint. Somebody open a door somewhere.
I just want to like see a customized moped more than I've ever.
Yeah, well, again, thanks for having us here, and thanks for coming on the show. Hopefully we'll have you on again. Hopefully we'll be able to do this at fucking Freedom and have an open show at Freedom. And,
Next time let's ride out here.
Yeah.
It's fucking frigid.
Yeah, come out in the warm.
Yeah, it's a little fucking
Come out in the warm,
chilly.
but I got everything set up in here, and we can spread out a little better.
Yeah, and maybe do a nice fucking bike ride too. It'd be nice.
Yeah.
We don't ride out this way much because...
Why?
Yeah. I mean, we have to run through Toronto, right? Nobody likes to drive through Toronto. But
that's the thing. Toronto is the border of a lot of people. Right?
Oh,
If you live on this side of Toronto, you don't really go to the other side.
Yeah.
If you live on that side, you don't really
We
come
don't
to this
go.
side.
Yeah,
You kind
100%.
of just stop at Toronto.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why Toronto gets a lot of stuff going on, but then Toronto is its own thing in itself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So out this way, I mean, we have our own whole kind of thing out here, and there's not a lot of this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a little bit here and there, but there's not a lot.
Yeah.
And it would be cool to get more guys to come out here because then more people would see this stuff.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because I go to go to these ride-ins or shows or whatever. I'm the only guy in a chopper, the only guy in a panhead, which is cool because you get a lot of attention. But then you're going, it'd be cool to have someone else to chat with.
Yeah.
That
Exactly.
understands
Even
what
if
you're...
they're already your buddy and you just go together.
Yeah.
At least you don't have to like stand there with your thumb up your ass. Going,
Exactly.
like, well, I wish I had
You're,
somebody.
you're
knew
looking
what
at the offshore chopper scene right
Yeah,
now.
you're
like, this is
that's
it.
kind of how we fucking fell into
Found
with
each
each
other.
other's. You go to a bike show and there's nothing there that really kind of fits into the same mentality you are.
Yeah.
And it's another reason why we started this podcast is trying to build the community into a little bit more closer
Break
of
down the
a
walls, bring the pockets together.
yeah.
Mhm.
And hopefully
We were
these
even
runs
talking
across
about-
Toronto won't be an issue, right? When
Yeah.
you get to know more people on either side of the city, it makes it easier when you know, okay, I'm heading out to Kitchener, something happens. I know Lee's not far by. I can
Yeah.
pick
Yeah,
up
well,
a
that's the
toolkit
thing,
and
right?
fix something,
Yeah.
right? Or going out for a ride with them and then heading back home after.
Well, yeah. One more shout I'll give is to all my buddies over at Shadywood there, all my bros at Shadywood.
Yeah.
Those guys. I mean, they're not all into choppers and stuff, but those guys are like my go-to guys to ride with around here.
Yeah, absolutely. I know Cash and Jesse and all those guys. Yeah.
Yeah. Those guys are my bros.
They're good guys. Good guys to party with. They know how to fucking pound back the
They
beers.
know how to give her. They know how to give her.
And for bagger guys, these guys I was talking about, I mean, these guys put fucking miles on their bike.
Yeah.
And they rip like...
Yeah, I've never seen anyone blow up a motorcycle as many times as Joel.
Yeah, he's pretty throttle happy.
Oh yeah, he saw it. It's what it's like
He's like our Evan.
that's the reason why those guys are a big reason why I bought back my orange bike because that motor is pretty hopped up in that bike.
Yeah.
So it'll keep up. I mean, I don't have the 6-speed, but I'll keep off the line. They can beat me in the top end for sure.
Yeah.
But
Well, Joel's put a lot of fucking...
oh yeah, those
shit
guys
into
and
that
they
engine.
ride. Oh yeah, and he's doing a new transmission right now, and yeah, those guys are great guys.
Yeah.
And I spent a lot of time with those guys. But yeah, chopper guys around here, there's not a lot.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Like it's fine. Like it is what it is. You kind of find the guys you hang out with. And a lot of times, you know, just because they have a chopper doesn't mean they're guys you want to hang out with either.
Yeah.
You know, like I've met lots of people that have really cool stuff, and I'm going, you guys are butt plugs. So, I mean, case in point. I was like, I invite these guys over to my house, and he knocks over my pan.
It almost takes out a bike and a car.
It's like, wow.
But yeah, I mean, we're in the same scene out there too, right? Like we know some chopper people out there as well too, and they're good people, but they're not the everyday people, right? Like you pick and choose who you want to drink with and ride with and party with.
You got to have common interests, but my interests are broad. Like I'm not just the chopper guy, you know. I'm into like all kinds of different stuff. Yep. I like to build choppers, but I'm not just a chopper guy.
No, absolutely.
And I think, and you know, sometimes people get a little like
pretentious.
Pretentious is one word, but like you get a little monotone, right? You get a little monotone. You're like, well, I'm into choppers, and now your whole life has to be choppers.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I'm into other stuff too, you know. Like I'm into like, you know.
Well, you got a sick old car here.
Yeah,
like you know what I mean?
I'm into like different kinds of stuff. Like I just bought like a bunch of like old pub shit for my house, and I like different things. I'm into old stuff in general. And I like the eras, and the bikes are part of that. But I'm into all kinds of different stuff. Yeah, but a lot of people, not a lot of people, but certain people kind of get into like choppers, and they just like, that's it. If it's not choppers, it's not even worth considering.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's not what choppers was ever about, right?
Yep.
Choppers was kind of like took all these different elements and kind of made something new.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, we're all pretty much same way too, right? I got a 98 Softail at home. Like I got a fucking Triumph bobber. I got another old Triumph. Like it just, I'm a cigar and whiskey guy.
Sportster? I knew it. Yeah. I knew it.
But,
you guys started a chopper podcast, and half of you guys are riding Sportsters. That's just the way it is.
Exactly. And I had an 82 Gullwing.
but again, a lot of it's budget rate.
Well,
Sportsters are budget friendly.
It's ass friendly. In our area, we got a lot of fucking potholes. So bringing if the Triumph ever fucking ran for me, you know, it's not fun to fucking to ride. So I wanted the daily that I could fire up whenever I wanted.
And I think that's the reality. Like a lot of guys have really pushed this, like choppers are ride choppers or fuck off, or choppers for life, or whatever this. You know? And I'm totally into that stuff, and I think it's awesome. But I think I can only think of a couple of guys that are really true to that statement.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Because a lot of people will identify as that, but they're not really like I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not choppers only.
Yeah.
Jason Parker? Yeah. The guy's only got old bikes.
Yeah.
You won't touch anything newer than nothing newer than a shovel head.
Yeah.
I don't even think he has any shovel that he owns. He might own a couple of shovel heads, but he's like panheads and knuckleheads and all of his stuff is old, and he's got. That's it. There's no other.
Yeah.
There's no other option. He's never getting on a Softail. He's never getting on a banger.
Yeah.
Right. That's just the reality of it.
Yeah.
So that's one guy that could actually maybe claim that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Most people can't, but they do because they want to like just kind of.
They want to fit in and
you want the recognition to be different, right?
Yeah. But it's okay to be into cool stuff. Like sometimes just being into cool stuff is.
Yeah.
Could not even be cool shit. Just be shit. Like I'm not into a lot of cool shit. I like comic books and shit. It's not cool at all. I like drinking whiskey. It's not really cool. I smoke cigars. It's not really cool.
Yeah, it's like it's more about like the personality of the people into it than it is about the
absolutely
item.
100%.
Because if it's just about the item, then all you need to do to participate is pony up some cash.
Exactly.
And that's not what this has ever been about.
No.
Right? That's not what this has ever been about. It's like it's kind of weirdos and people and cool guys and like stuff that's people that are into weird shit.
Yeah.
And, you know, people that think a little differently or do things a little differently. That's what it's more about. It's not just about being able to go out and buy just a cool ass bike and I'm a chopper guy now. Choppers for life. But, no, man, like you have a BMW, you're not choppers for life.
Yeah.
Like it's just not it's choppers for now.
It's choppers today.
That's a fucking t-shirt I'm making. Choppers for now.
Choppers for life. Scratch out life and for now. That's awesome. That's awesome. All right, I guess we'll call it a day, and we'll sit back and have a couple more shots of rum and shit before we go.
Unfreeze my balls with
Yeah.
my leg.
I gotta take a piss.
I've been sitting so long. I'm so fucking old. I pulled a hammy, I think. Sitting here.
I gotta get off this like 1 foot off the ground couch somehow.
You're always 1 foot up the ground.
All right, guys. Thanks for joining us at Sketchy Chopper Society. I'm Matthew.
Twan.
Mike, our guest.
Twan? No, I'm leaving. Sorry.
All right, have a good one,
Bigger
guys.
Twan.